Imagine going to an altogether different nation and getting harassed by a group of locals. That sounds like a nightmare, right? Well, the recent incident of a Spanish woman who was raped in Jharkhand has shook the nation. But it is one of those many cases which get lost in the race of getting justice. Good afternoon, this is Rupal Chaube and you are watching Voice of Humanity. With so many laws and measures in place, violence against women emerges as one of the major hurdles for women across the globe. This Women's Day, we are joined in by Priya Varadarajan, founder and CIO of Durga India. It's a citizen initiative to empower women and create safer public spaces to ensure gender equality. Thank you so much for your time, Priya.
Thank you, Rupal.
I would like to start this by asking that in 21st century, as we look forward to create this world a better place to live in, how the problem of violence against women in India is becoming more and more severe and how far we have come to fight against it.
Thank you, Rupal, for asking me this question, because I think when we talk about violence, particularly gender-based violence, it's also very important to talk about what we categorize as violence, right? It is not just the physical abuse that one sees. It's not the visible signs of violence like bleeding and bruised and, sort of beaten up. But then violence itself has a far, far deeper connotation. So when we really understand what violence is, then we realize that there's enough data to say that almost 90% of us has faced some form of violence. It could be stares, glares, whistling, people stalking us and all of that. It could be the severe forms of violence, but it is also the everyday subtleties of sexism and patriarchy that we face as women, girls and marginalized people, which is, do I have the choice to pursue a degree that I want to? Or do I have the choice to actually go to a dance class that I want to? Or do I have choice while I am very well within the age of marriage, have the ability to choose my partner even, right? So all of those are also categorized as some form of violence and abuse. So when you look at the larger scheme of things, then actually violence is all over. It's all pervasive, it's prevalent everywhere. And therefore, how we try to combat it also needs to be extremely complex, extremely nuanced, and subjective. It is not a one size fits all.
So as you pointed out that violence is beyond what we see it physically, right? So mental health has become an important topic of debate these days, which indicates that violence can also be inflicted psychologically and emotionally rather than physically. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah. I think we all are very familiar and have all experienced being gaslighted, right? To be made to feel that things are our mistake. And if only you had listened to me, which we keep hearing from various people who have power and influence on us, is in itself a huge reason why we start beginning to question ourselves. We start believing that maybe that day in that bus, I shouldn't have worn that dress. Or maybe I should have held my dupatta closer. And this is something as young girls, we always listen to it from day one, right? From the day we are responsible to get out of house, we are responsible for our bodies. Suddenly this body becomes like this huge baggage to carry. And then we start to being asked questions of what were you doing when someone was smiling at you? Were you smiling back at him? You must have definitely said something. You did not ask him to stop. You let him send you that email. You let him WhatsApp you. You have such a DP on your WhatsApp profile. No wonder you will be subject to all kinds of physical abuse, right? So these kinds of things are there. Daunting, and they are taunting us all the time that this in itself is a huge form of mental abuse, right? It does not allow you to feel confident and comfortable in your skin. Then the comparisons that we hear right? Or the way we are treated differently at home, the way we are treated differently across wherever we go, between who we are as women or the men and boys around us, right? So when a girl gets to puberty and when she has bodily changes and she menstruates, her world just collapses, right?
Yeah.
It just gets into a small cocoon. But if a boy, her same age, who's been growing in her same kind of family circumstances, when he gets to a stage of growth, his world actually grows.
Yeah.
He's given a motorbike. He's asked to go and conquer the next, not the next street, but the next town or the next city. So even these differences of why am I treated differently is the next reason of subtleties that actually build to becoming far severe mental issues for individuals. In fact, we are staying in a country where every hour we are told that an adolescent attempts to take their life, right? So it just basically is a great time to reflect, to say, who and what are we doing to our people as a nation, as people, as citizens, as parents, as comrades, as teachers, as the entire ecosystem called society. It's a great time to reflect, but we don't have the luxury of that time.
As you talked about the country, I would like to bring in context one of the recent cases that's in the news, where women are protesting in Sandesh Khali, alleging that the TMC leader, Shah Jahan Sheikh, has exploited them. And even if we look back a little, this entire controversy around the wrestlers' protest where Mr. Brij Bhushan was accused. So, on a national level, how does this translate into a life of a victim who has been abused by people in power whose duty is to protect them?
Yeah. I know you're asking me at a national level, but even if you talk about it at a personal level, right? Why does abuse happen? Or why does one person become a victim of abuse? Because no matter who the abuser is, has already got a position of power over this person, right? So any abuser has power or has the need to want to convey that I have power over you. And that is consistently how abuse and sexual violence operates. It is a power game. It is not lust. It is not expressions of love. It is not because of our clothes. It is not because of what we said or we did. It is purely about who we are and how the perpetrator wants to demonstrate power, right? So in an everyday situation, if there is a person who's standing next to me in a bus and they are able to show power with me because perhaps I'm the only woman in the bus and perhaps I'm the only woman in the bus and it's 8:30 in the night, then imagine how, like we talk about intersectionality. So there are these further dimensions of how power starts to play on just me who's speaking here very confidently, but I may not be confident because I'm the only woman in the bus at 8:30 in the night in this place that I don't know or I'm not very familiar with.
Correct.
So that's the most basic personal context. Then imagine how that power starts to play when it's my boss at work. So right now this person in the bus is a total stranger and I may still be able to take some action. I may at least be able to shout and respond. If this is a professor in my college or a boss at work, there's multiple dimensions of power, right? There's power of this individual being a man, and then there's this power of this individual being the man who is in charge, right? So it's a double-edged sword on fire on me, right? And so I have very little that I can do at all in that situation. Therefore, then, a situation like the one you're talking about, where the person is not just a man, not just has power over me, but has immense influence over different kinds of people and politics. Where will I ever have a say to say anything about this person, to be able to even raise my voice against this person and then access justice, right? We are in the same nation where the perpetrators of Bilkis Banu can walk out and get garlanded and celebrated. Then what are we talking about, right? Where is any access to justice for any woman of any caste, class, religion against any person of power at the level that you're talking about? Very limited.
Priya, do you think that those who are marginalized are more vulnerable to situations like these?
Absolutely, absolutely. We're very familiar with what we call Brahminical patriarchy, right? So that's where intersectionality plays at its peak, right? So when you're marginalized, especially when you're marginalized and identify as a woman, then your body doesn't even belong to you, right? So all this achut and chuachut and then untouchability and everything vanishes for a man of a dominant caste and therefore class to be able to access the body of a woman who according to him is of a non-dominant class and caste, right? Because it's available at his at his disposal.
Correct.
So therefore, when you're vulnerable and when you're marginalized, one is you don't have a voice. Two is, like I said, this whole idea of patriarchy plays out in the weirdest way. Third is you're also many times fending for your entire family, right? So you don't have the ability or the luxury to say, okay, if it is exploitation at work for a domestic help, she does not have the luxury to say, I will stop work. If she stops work, her children will have to stop eating, leave alone school, right? So you don't have that luxury. And then finally, what are the mechanisms of redressal? Even while there are any number of laws and the expansion of 354 under the IPC post Nirbhaya and everything, as a home help, do I know that anything like this exists? Has anyone taken the time and trouble to explain this to me? Do I know how to access it? If I know that I'm violated at my workspace, which is home, then do I know where I need to go? Because the police station feels really scary for me. I will not want to go there, right? So therefore, do I even know that there is a department under the Women and Child Department, which is called the Local Complaints Committee, where there is a person who's actually posted, designated, employed, paid, resourced to look after my needs and actually provide me access with justice? No, I don't know. So, whereas maybe you and I will know that, you know. So, that's how I think multiple marginalization plays out in multiple ways to just sort of further push you down with lesser and lesser forms of access to justice.
Okay. So, more than 8 lakh crimes were reported in 2022 against women by NCRB. These numbers are alarming, and cases like Nirbhaya gain a lot of support and coverage. There are crimes that often go unreported and unnoticed. What could be the possible reasons, and how can we combat that, and how media plays a role there?
So Nirbhaya, I think there's been a lot of research, formal, informal, to say why did that case or why did that situation get so amplified. While I am personally extremely happy that the problem or the concern of my safety, or as in my safety, as in not me, but individuals, came to a common ground, right, post that situation. However, how did we decide that that was our breaking point? I don't know if there is a logical reason as to why that is perhaps the breaking point, but perhaps it was because it happened in the capital. It happened well within regular hours, like 8:30 in the night is not like midnight, right? It happened in a place where we all consider to be safe, right? It happened in public transport. We could all connect with the victim. And therefore, perhaps we all brought our concern to a common place to say that it can happen to any one of us. It can happen to people we know and we love. So it was like a tipping point which allowed for us to leverage and build on a lot of laws. Having said that, while there are thousands of crores allocated as funding with Nirbhaya Fund, because we've just now allocated a fund after this crime, what's really happening of that money, right? Where is that funding going? Is that funding actually being used for people who face marginalization and who are sexually abused, and perhaps even in that very public transport or in public spaces that we're talking about? I don't think that the monies are being used constructively to reach the most the victims or the survivors of those crimes, right? Whereas monies are being used for technology around it. Monies are being used to actually create fancy systems of, first point of like how do I alert to all the way to how does someone come to know about it, and then some really like I'm sure they'll use AI and all kinds of fancy tools to do stuff, but it doesn't really reach people at the end of the day. What therefore can reach people, right? I think people. People can reach people, and people make these systems. People make government systems, people make judicial systems, people make the criminal justice systems, the police systems, media, like you asked, and also bystanders, right? We're all people and we all have a role to play, and I think we all need to take the power back in our own hands as well, right? That perhaps can be the beginning of a huge social change. What we are also attempting to do within my own organization, Durga, is actually place power back in the hands of people. And when I say people, people, like I said, everywhere. That when I see something inappropriate, when I see a sexual crime happening around me, I will have a stand and I will take action. Now, the smartness here is, what do I do?
Yeah.
How do I take action? And that's what the core of our work is also about. So how do you intervene? Whom do you intervene with, etc.? So that's what really needs to be done. I'll come to the point of media, right? Media today, I feel, does not have their own voice, while media should be the loudspeaker of issues of people, right? And somewhere it's this own voice of media that we need to resurrect and we need to build back, to say that, you know, there wasn't multiple channels, there wasn't all kinds of tools, but we still had media in the form of newspapers that brought freedom to the country, right? Because the common concern and problem was actually articulated well enough, the message went well enough, and people really felt that they had a role to play. And that's the kind of role I feel that media can really do to bring responsibility and accountability to people who really are in the places of power.
Okay. So, as you said, that as a responsible citizens of the society, it's our responsibility to take forward the cause and to work for it. Thank you so much, Priya, for your time. Thank you for watching Voices of Humanity. For more, stay connected with us.